Well, so as we discussed before the short break, sort of this is the agreement that we signed, and during the break we discussed a bit with Sophie about the ambitions of this different agreement and how the politician is working. And again, Sophie, this is because it's linked to the economy. So it's a complicated issue, and this is the main aim of this planetary boundary lecture or workshop, is to show that we have this 9 planetary boundary, but it's not easy to solve them because it's very interconnected, the 9 boundary, and they interconnected to the industry, to the business sector, to the economy, to the policymaker. So actually, it's interconnected to each other, interconnected to everything, and this is the challenge. Um, Again, we're still in the Paris Agreement that was signed 2015 and signed by 174 countries, and they take some action, or they decide to take some action, like keep global temperature below 2 degrees above the pre-industry time. Limit the greenhouse gas emission by human activity to what can be naturally absorbed. And our first target is 2050. This is the target that we can see everywhere now. And again, to be like my point of view, that I think we are too optimistic for that, and to reach that limit by 2050. Review each country achievement every 5 years. For rich countries to help poorer nations to adapt the climate change and switch to renewable energy. And again, here there is a lot of a challenge, because I am not sure that rich countries really help poor countries, because I don't think this process is working. I don't think there is even sort of technology change in order to help poor countries. So now we go to the second important core boundary, is biodiversity or biosphere integrity boundary. We already crossed this boundary, unfortunately. And as I present during the introduction part of the meeting today, that I believe that biodiversity is the most important boundary, simply because if we lose the dinosaurs, as Katrina highlighted in the chat, if we use dinosaurs, we can't get them back. We lost them. So why we have this biodiversity loss? Habitat destruction has occurred in many ecosystems. We have like lose a lot of coral reef. We have lose a lot of tropical rain forest. Population of the living organism are reduced, and I presented during the beginning of the talk, the number of the organism just go down. Marine, terrestrial, everything start to go down. If too few individual in a species remain, so if we assume that there is a species that almost distant, and then we still have some of them still remain, the survival of the species may be under threat, and it may become extinct. Species interact, so entire community come under threat. So, and this is my comment to Katrina, that if we lose species, this is itself maybe not problem, but actually it affect other things, because all the food cycle is depend on this species. So everything is interconnected. So if we lose a species, it can affect our food cycle, and by the end, we will find that we lose something. This is a planetary boundary again. This is the number of the species that is acceptable to distinct each year. So actually the number is 1. So we can accept that one species will 1 per million species that can disappear each year. Currently, there is 100 per million species disappear, which is far away from the boundary, and the boundary is 10. So it's acceptable that we can have like 10 per million species per year disappear, but actually we have now 100 species. And this is why you can see here in the biodiversity, this is a biodiversity boundary, and you can see this is a boundary which is 10. So this line, the line that separates the green and the yellow is the 10, and we not even in the yellow, we are really in extreme red. So we really here in great danger. There is some way to protect species. One of them is monitor biodiversity, and there is a lot of projects that in going to monitor biodiversity. We can use seed bank or sperm bank in order to sort of conserve the species. Prohibit international trade in species. So if you know in 80 or early 80, it was like an international trade in for example, skins of some animals that is used in Africa. And now the people start, or the government in Europe and in Western countries start to prohibit this international trade. And now we can start to see sort of recover of these things. Try to limit fishing when fish are not existing so fast. So try to limit our fishing. Limit the use of agriculture chemical, because as we will see in the coming slide, these chemicals that we use to produce food actually affect the biodiversity. And the most important thing is increase public awareness. And I would like to give your attention to this sentence, increase the public awareness. And you will see in the coming few slides, this increased public awareness is coming several times. And this is actually one of the main points here, because, you know, in order to save in this green zone, we need to change ourselves. We need to change our society. We need to use the resources in a wise way. Not the government, because the government try to, of course, government put like limits, put rules, but it should be from ourselves, from our inside, to say, okay, we already need to take action. As Sophie highlighted during the break, that well-educated people, they start to like has this awareness. The people start to say, okay, we need to do action by themselves. But you know, not all of the 7 billion person who are living on the continent or on the earth are aware of this. So we need to increase the awareness in the public in order to at least to be safe in some of these planetary boundaries. This is one of the comments that is came from Sandra. I think Sandra is living somewhere in the north. I don't know when exactly, yeah, Sandra, you are living, but you said that people use forest. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was not to mention the place where I live. It's the place where I'm from. I'm from Portugal.
Yep.
And my council does have like 90% of forest covered. And that was just happening in the last years. And there is not a risk of deforestation at all. The risk that we have is like an incidence of fires. And by burning the remains of the forest, we can like produce like energy. And I think in that case, I think it's a very like kind of successful thing, but I will not say that is the case of all the world, because generalizing is not like is not like adequate, because one thing that is kind of a nice example for some place is not for other. right?
Yes, yes, I completely
But
agree
in
with you.
this case, I think it's
Yeah,
a good like kind of model. And I have seen kind of like the forest being
yes,
increasing, but not in a good way, because when we talk about forest, always we think, oh, nice trees, oh, nice, capture CO2, but depends upon the trees and depending upon what they are doing that land.
yes,
And in
yes,
that case, is not the best solution.
yes,
And we should rethink in that place what forest do we want, and we want to promote and to care for.
yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to like reflect on the sentence that you said now, or this thing that you said now. Actually, when we have like in Europe this summer, the last summer, we have a lot of fire. I think in Italy, in Portugal, and I think in Turkey as well, right? In
Yeah,
forests there.
it has been like kind of all over. Sometimes Portugal,
Yes,
sometimes Spain, France, south of
exactly.
France. Also, it went to the north because also in I think in Sweden or somewhere in
Yeah.
England some years ago, the things are moving.
Yes, yes, and you can see this actually is due to the climate change, because this effect in southern Europe at least is due to the increase of the temperature, the high increase of the temperature during the summertime, and as a result, we have this fire in the different forests. So actually, this is again climate change affects something else. Um, Here actually I would like to highlight here in this land system change boundary that we already crossed. Again, you see here in the land system change boundary here, if you see my mouse, we are in the yellow zone, so we are cross the boundary, but we still can do something. uh, uh, Actually, the more danger part is not the fire that occur in the forest, for example. Actually, the danger part here in this part of the planetary boundary is that we start to change places in order to produce food, because now our population start to increase. We are 7 billion, almost 7 billion person who are living on the earth, and we need food to feed this 7 billion, and we increase the number of the people that who are living increase, and we need more food for them. And the government start to decide in some countries, okay, just cut this forest and instead use this land to produce food. And they neglect that the land system, when you are cutting forest, you actually contribute negatively to the climate change. And they are stupid enough, because when you are cutting forest, you change the climate, and suddenly you will not find water in order to produce food, because climate will affect the precipitation of the water on your country, positive or negative, depend on. So for example, it was positive in Africa, because we in Central Africa we have a lot of water, but in Europe this year, current year, we don't have a lot of water, and you can see there is a lot of rivers in Germany and in Central Europe without water at all, right? And this is due to the climate change. So actually here the land system change as well that we crossed is affect other planetary boundary and affected by other planetary. So the problem for this land system change that natural ecosystem include rainforests have been used for urban development, like try in order to use in farming, include growing biofuel groups. So the people start to think, okay, maybe we can cut this forest in order to put biofuel crops and get produce this biofuel energy from it. And they forgot, okay, you are cutting forest, and this means that you still affect the climate change by negative way. Um, Bludent, uh, ah, this is also important point. Sandra said, I don't know the number, but I have read once that the food produced worldwide is enough to feed everyone. The problem is disproportion consumption between. Yes, yes, Sandra. Yes, I completely agree. The problem is this portion, and I think by the end of yes, yes, also Sophie, I think I agree with you. I think I will show at the end of the presentation, I think tomorrow, the amount of the consumption, not only in the food, but everything from US, the people who are living in US, is almost we need 4 times as our all the universe in order to feed them. Why? I don't know the point. Why we need to use such amount of consumption? Why we need to, as you see, we consume a lot of food more than what we need. There is there is poor people. We can give this food to the poor people, and we still keep the land as it is. So I completely agree with both of you that the problem here is not the amount of the food that exists, but the distribution of the food. And this is again send us to the core of this planetary boundary. Yes, Sandra said it's look and should be something easy to sort. Um, I am not sure if it's easy to sort or not, because Sandra, again, this is send us back to this awareness. I know Sandra is aware of the problem, and I know that you will use what you need. I need to eat this amount of food. I will buy only this amount of food. But I will give you an example of the rich Gulf countries in the Arabic region, Saudi Arabia and Emirat and these countries. If you go to a restaurant there during the lunchtime or dinner time, if you see the amount of the food that is just put on the street, that they throw it away, it's a huge amount, really huge amount. So you need to increase the awareness of the people in order to say, okay, please stop to eat a lot, stop to eat or consume more than what you need. Because,
Can I say, sorry
yeah,
to
please,
interrupt you.
please,
Can I
Sandra.
also like, it's kind of like a small example, and obviously these are like small and local examples, but I think they can be replicated. I know that's not easy, but like more than 20 years ago, I was in university and I was like studying and working in a supermarket. And at some point, like the things that are going out or like close out to the out date, they are putting in a lower price at some point. They realize that like these people are not buying the things at the right price, like the normal things, and they ask us to throw in the bin. But at some point they were not happy that we're throwing the bin, but they were wanting that we're like kind of destroying them for the people that were like going to the bin to take them. I was having 18 at the time, and I refused to do that. I
Yeah,
refused, and that was like some time ago. But I think that's not just about us, but it's about the economy, it's about money. But I don't think that's big money on there. It's just kind of, I don't know. Sometimes I don't understand. Sorry, I'm
it's
taking
just
some time,
behavior.
but
It's really,
yeah,
believe
it's
believe
just
me,
kind of
Sandra, it's behavior
goes.
of people. Because what's the point to destroy the food? Just give them for free, right? So it's just the behavior of the people.
Yeah, but they didn't want it. They were like a big
Yeah,
food chain,
yeah,
and they explicitly ask us or take our time to do that. I said I'm not doing that. Just
yeah,
do whatever you want. I can go away. I can, you can fire me, but I'm not doing that.
yes,
It's against me. And
yes,
it was like maybe more, yeah, 30 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Sophie put in the chat that in US it's the same as the situation that you said, or the situation in these rich countries. They just bin the food, they throw the food. Why? I don't know why they are using. Why is the people doing something like this, right? Yeah. If we go to the second point about the fertilizers, when we put fertilizer on the land, so actually when we start to decide, okay, cut completely this forest and make it a land to be used for food, producing food. We need to use fertilizer for this. And this fertilizer, as we will see in the coming slide, affect negatively the biodiversity. Okay. Maybe I can cover this point before I read your chat, Sophie. The biofuel groups and and group grown for export means that not enough for food may be produced for local use. So, people start to produce, like, for example, in Egypt, they produce a lot of food for exporting. Okay, you just produce enough food for yourself. You don't need to go for exporting. And again, there is a lot of political agenda behind this. Because, for example, we know Sudan and Southern Sudan, they have water, they have land, and they can produce food enough for everyone. But there is political decision not to do so, because if Sudan start to produce food, they will be independent. They will not depend on Europe or America. And the political decision, they decide, okay, you should be poor country forever, depend on us, regardless that you can produce food that the people or the other nation needs. So again, this is to reflect that this 9 planetary boundary, it's indicator, but it's really connected to economy, connected to policymaker, connected to everything. So now I can read, I will read the comments. So Sophie, policy and country strategy could help reduce food waste. I think it's need to be driven by government leading by example in a way. Of course, I completely agree with you, Sophie. Like, we have to put sort of, or government should put rules that you should not use more than these limits. And they can put like punishment or incentive. If you really good person, you get sort of tax deduction or something like this. But we need to do something. We need to increase the awareness, and this should be by the government. As you said, leading by example. Like, start the government, put this in the media, try to tell the people, yeah, people, please do that. Jack is put a like comment about capital. Definitely, I agree with you. Sandra is because I think it should be easy. I completely agree. I don't remember exactly, Sandra, what is the easy. Um, but if you agree with me, this make me happy. So I agree with you as well. Um, yes, Sophie said it's about money. Yes, completely I agree with you. It's about money, Sophie. It's just financial things. Sandra is about capitalism, yes, and lobbies. Katrina Footwest is also good business opportunity. EG is a cool startup in US. They rise it. Yes, yes, Katrina. So actually, you covered several points. Like, you try to solve the problem and you highlight the reason. So, for example, Sandra and Sophie highlighted it's a problem of money, problem of capitalism, problem of political things. Because as Sandra highlighted, that we have enough food for everyone, but due to political agenda, this food is not distributed equally. And this is why other nations start to cut forest, start to cut or to reuse the land by a different way. Katrina also tried to highlight or try to suggest a part how we can solve this. Like, there is some startup in order to redistribute this food waste. I can see there is one or two here in Europe. She gave an example from US as well. So this can be a solution, but why we need to redistribute the food waste? Maybe we can reduce our consumption before reduce the waste. And Sophie highlighted or gave us an example that we need to show success story. We need to show example. We need to say to the people, please don't do that. And I have a nice story. I think Sophie and Katrina know that my mobile is new since 8, 9 years, and it doesn't work anymore. But I still keep using it because I know if I bought a new mobile, the carbon footprint that is attached to this mobile is produced somewhere else. I try to reduce this carbon footprint. So we need to use ourselves as an example. I really be nervous when I start to go to a restaurant and start to put the main dish, and after 5 minutes the waiter come to get the dish and give you the main dish, and then take the dish and the other dish. Okay, why of that? We can use one dish and you can put the food and we can eat. Because simply when you are remove 3 dishes from me as a person who are eating, and you get 3 dishes, different dishes, this means that you consume 3 amount of the water in order to wash these dishes. Why you are doing that? We can save some water. Well, so here there is, again, we still within this boundary, the land use. More than 50% of ice-free land should be used for group growing and human habitat. So actually, we should not use more than 15% of the land that we have now, not the ice cover land, the land that we have now. Farming should be concentrated in the most productive area. So we start as an example that I present in Sudan, for example. I don't know why the United Nations and the big countries, why didn't invest in Sudan in order to produce food. They have very good land, flat lands, huge amount of land. They have enough water. They can produce a lot of food for all the continent, for everyone who live on the continent. But again, it's political situation. It's political opinion. There is agenda behind this. So here's one of the suggestions is that to use or to the land that is most productive. Yes, I completely agree with you, Jack. So Jack says that it's more efficient. Yes, it's more efficient. But no one would like to go for that. Again, because there is some political agenda behind that. People should eat less meat to reduce the area under cultivation. So we need to eat less meat, and more efficient group land growing should be grown. So this is sort of suggestion of the land uses. Now we will go to the next boundary, which is biochemical flow boundary. We already again cross this boundary, which is you see here, this red boundary. We already, you see here, we cross the nitrogen. We already crossed it since a very long time. The phosphorus, we already crossed it, but not like as the nitrogen. And what is the problem here with the biochemical flow? Actually, the Earth system intelligent enough in order to balance the chemical elements that we put to the earth. So for example, if we start to use a land in order to produce food, and we start to put chemicals, a fertilizer, in order to fertilize this land, the land can accept to some limit. It can balance this chemicals that we put to the land. But until limit, you can't put above the limit. Above this limit, the earth can't balance it anymore. So actually, the balance of chemical element maintained by natural cycle has been disrupted. And this is due to different things. Fertilizer. So when again, the biochemical flow is linked to the land use. So there is a link here, because you start to change the land use, you start to cut forests, you start to use land use in order to produce foods. And in order to produce food, you start to put fertilizer, nitrogen and phosphorus. And this is above the limit that the earth can absorb, the earth can handle. We have problem with the nitrogen fixation due to that. Of course, there is nitrogen and phosphorus is come due to using of fossil fuels. So all of these factors is affect to this biochemical flow. We have some consequence, of course. One of these consequence is this phosphate and this nitrogen, nitrate, and phosphate is run off into water, into the bodies of water. Bodies of water, this can be river, can be lakes, can be underground water. And as a result, we have algae bloom. We start to, this algae bloom affects the biodiversity in the water. So you see again, here you start to try to solve a food problem. And as a result, you cut forest, you start to use or change the land use. And in order to do so, you put more biochemical material. This biochemical material starts to go fresh to the fresh water. It's change the fresh water use. And by default, you produce algae and algae bloom, and you make this water unusable in terms of biodiversity. And by the way, you affect the biodiversity just in one action. You do one action, and you think that you help yourself or you help your society. And as a result, you just create a catastrophe. You damage everything just in one action. Here, the second sentence is not only in the biodiversity, and it's also lay in the acidification. When you are using this biochemical flow, for example, the carbon dioxide exceeds the limit. The carbon dioxide that exceeds the limit that the earth can absorb, this carbon dioxide go to the sea, to the lakes, to the river. It changes the pH. And this by default start to change the rate of exchange of the oxygen to the fish. Fish start to die. We again start to have sort of biodiversity loss. So everything is very well interconnected. For the boundary, actually, we don't have one boundary here. We have several boundaries. We have boundary for the nitrogen. We have boundary for the phosphorus. But here they give an example for, I think, the nitrogen. So the boundary no more than 62 million tons of the nitrogen should be added to the ecosystem. So for the nitrogen, we should not add more than 62 million tons. For the phosphorus, there is another boundary each year. We already now, actually it's not now, it's 2016. So this number is 2016, so 6 years ago. 2016, we produced or we added 150 million tons. You can imagine, it's almost double of this number in 1 year, double of the number. And here, this is just the boundary defined for other elements. So actually, this 62 million tons, this is for nitrogen, but for the phosphorus, we have another boundary. For other element, we have another boundary for each element. Maybe I can use this as a last slide, like a positive things before we go for tomorrow's session. The stratospheric ozone boundary. Actually, this like a good thing that we can conclude the day by it, because simply we succeeded to avoid it, which is give a good sign that we can do something. So actually, the problem is that in 70, the concentration of ozone in the stratosphere start to decrease so much. And in the spring of 70, there is a hole in the ozone layer could be detected over Antarctica. So actually, scientists observe a hole in the ozone in 70s. The ozone, as you know, actually is oxygen 3. So it's a component that chemical component that is made by 3 atoms of oxygen. And this oxygen 3 is very important to absorb the ultraviolet light from the sun. And the ultraviolet light actually is danger because it's affect our DNA and it's damage the life of organisms, so it can kill. And you can see, for example, the ultraviolet, for example, can create sort of skin cancer. Like some people got skin cancer because they got some extra ultraviolet. So it's a danger thing. And of course, again, it's contribute to the climate change. So in 87, there is an agreement called Montreal Protocol, like international agreement, in order to reduce the fluorine and the chlorine material, because fluorine and chlorine, this is a product that we produce that damage this ozone layer. And in this Montreal Protocol or Montreal Agreement, the nation agreed that we should reduce this chloride and fluorine material in order to save the ozone layer. And we succeeded to do so. So actually, the ozone or stratospheric ozone boundary is the only boundary that we succeeded to avoid. So this is like a good example or good positive thing that we succeeded to do. So the thickness of the ozone layer is measured by Thompson unit. The boundary that the Thompson unit should be at least the thickness of the layer should be 276 Thompson unit. And in 2016, the thickness is 300 Thompson. So actually we are above this limit. So we already in the safe side. So actually we sort of 30 Thompson unit above the limit, which is great. Well, so now we have few more. We have ocean acidification. We have fresh water. We have novel identity. We have atmospheric aerosol 1, 2, 3. We still have 4 planetary boundary. Do you think we need to go for one more or we can stop here? What do you suggest? Yeah, please,
I need
Sandra.
to go anyway. Yeah, thank you for
Okay.
your time, but yeah, I will need to go. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So maybe we can stop here. We still have like 4 boundaries. Maybe I can like Sophie just said put a comment, I read it. If we can ban it CFC gases for the ozone, we should be able to ban others that are so dangerous. Yes, I completely agree, Sophie. So this is why I would like to conclude today with this example, just to not be negative and see the positive side of the story, that we can do something. But again, we need awareness. Okay. This awareness, actually, this is good that most of us are academic here. Maybe we have some students. You, as you, for example, Sandra, you, Sophie, you can, for example, I know Sophie create a great example, great tool. It's called Earth Center Business Design, and they to help business people to create green industry. You Sandra, you can teach things like this in order to increase the awareness of your students. Students who are with us, I don't know Jack is a student or academic, but if you, Jack, is a student or academic, you can put this in your courses. If you're students, you can go to your family at the end of the day and you say, okay, hello, there is danger here, we need to reduce our consumption. It should be message by us to all the people, by the people who are educated enough to the people who are not so educated, in order to say, okay, Jack in China, so you are exactly in the place that produce CO2. So you can, Jack, for example, you can contribute by your knowledge. Yes. So thanks, Sandra. I think we can conclude this. Tomorrow, I think we'll start at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock CET. Okay. I hope this okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. So I will send tonight, and I will send the new time. So it's 2 o'clock CET, uh, not 12 o'clock, not 1 o'clock. Thanks all. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, Portland.